is one of those topics that only Zeg would throw up, explaining humans to aliens, and hopefully it'll be lively and discursive. But I'm going to keep the pace up because we've only got basically 50 minutes to sum up humanity. I'm Armando Iannucci, and we're joined by, well, it's actually such a wide breadth. We've got Janna Levin is a cosmologist, an astronomer, is based at Columbia University, is big on black holes, if that's not a contradiction in terms, and therefore is able to sum up the entire universe, hopefully, in 60 minutes. Julie Watson started off as a journalist, foreign correspondent in Russia for the Evening Standard, and but is now one of our most celebrated food writers. And I'm also very pleased to have back Caoilfhionn Gallagher, who's a QC, but a human rights lawyer who's defended many people who've been falsely imprisoned, particularly also across the rather worrying trend for journalists to be either arrested or indeed killed in conflict. So lots to discuss. I wanted actually to start by asking Janna, the aliens, if aliens could actually pick up signals from Earth, what would they be picking up? What would they be locking onto?
Yeah, just to give a sense of scale, if you look at our galaxy, it takes light about 100,000, maybe 120,000 years to cross the galaxy. So we have not been beaming signals for 120,000 years. We started intentionally sending signals into space a little over 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the light travel time of those signals, they're right in our backyard. Though there's probably a few thousand planets within that range. But we intentionally send signals often that are mathematical to indicate that it's not a naturally occurring phenomenon, but that a civilization created these signals.
Yes.
So we send mathematical patterns, assuming that math exists also on other
and
planets.
What would they be tuning into? Would it be radio? Or?
It's radio waves.
Yeah.
Usually, and we send things like DNA, mm-hmm. the sequence of DNA and indications that there's biological life, and then occasionally we throw in things like a symphony or something.
Okay. So,
but also Voyager, just very quickly, Voyager, the Golden Record famously went on the Voyager satellite, which has just broken out of the sun's influence a few years ago. So it's still also in our backyard.
And that's got like Chuck Berry and the Beatles and Beethoven and Bach and all sorts. If an alien arrived here, how would we cope? What would we do?
Well, I think that you, like anybody coming from any other space, you want to welcome them in and you want to make them feel at home. And so we probably would invite them to supper. We would cook them a meal. And I think the interesting thing that an alien might come up against is, depending on which garden he falls into or she falls into, you might be getting, a hot dog and a hamburger or a 9-course tasting menu. But what they would learn from what we offer them is, I think, about how important food is to us, not just as a matter of survival, but also because of the activity that it stimulates in the pleasure center of the brain. And that's something that also might be of interest to the alien, because so much money is spent by the industrial food complex paying scientists to try and work out how to stimulate that pleasure center at the smallest cost to them and the least nutritious value to us. But if I wanted to find out what would I cook for an alien, so okay, I did what so many people might do in the circumstances. I asked ChatGPT. I actually asked AI. So AI
I wouldn't trust it.
You're entirely right, because they said if they landed in England, I would have to feed this alien a cup of Yorkshire tea and a Sunday roast. And I thought, well, actually, if you want to get to know what the Brits really like and who are the Brits, if you don't give them a pint of lager and a packet of salt and vinegar crisps, you're missing the trick.
I have to say, if an alien landed in Georgia, he or she or it would have a far better time, food-wise.
Absolutely.
I'd say.
Do you,
Thank you. That's another aspect of human behavior, is it? Playing to the audience, wanting to get that immediate sense of reward and stimulation. Gil, would we be happy to? What if an alien arrived? In certain countries, that might throw everything into chaos.
I can see I'm going to be the light-hearted person on the panel after
Yeah.
this, reference to welcoming aliens, which I would love if we would do that. I mean, frankly, given the work that I do, I suspect if an alien were to land, we'd imprison them.
Yeah.
We'd have a whole series of questions for the outsider. They'd probably experience some form of racism. It's very difficult,
Yes.
given the space in which we're operating at the moment, with what we're seeing with these very draconian right-wing immigration type systems. I struggle to see that we would be welcoming them and giving them the cup of Yorkshire tea rather than probably throwing them in prison or attempting to. Happy Sunday, everyone.
And this is when we just then discover that they have their DNA allows them to just melt and slip under the cage and the front door and slip out, and then go for a meal. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, this topic it reminded me of a poetry movement in Britain in the 1960s called Martian poetry. Have any of you come across that? And that the idea was poets writing about stuff that is everyday, but as if seen from an outsider. And I thought that might be a useful way into it. Craig Raine was the poet often associated with it, and he wrote a poem called "A Martian Sends His Postcards Home." And this is the Martian's description of people asleep. At night, when all the colours die, humans hide in pairs and read about themselves in colour with their eyelids shut. And that's a wonderful description of people going to bed and dreaming. And it's that sense, I think, of seeing stuff anew. When I was thinking about this, I came up with, I was trying to think of 4 headings that we could look at. One of them was wonder. We have this ability as humans, I think, to celebrate what we see and be creative. For me, it's laughter. I live off laughter, but laughter isn't a weird thing. Do animals make jokes? Do animals laugh?
Oh yes, animals. Dogs smile.
Dogs smile,
Yes,
you reckon?
They do, absolutely.
Do dogs have a sense of humour? Or are they smiling just to get some food?
I think they're very cynical. I think they
Yeah,
they work the room.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think a cat, if an alien landed, we should send a cat to speak, to interact.
I think we should eat the cat.
No?
Just on that though, there's a kind of school over many years where various types of professionals will write a paper saying humans are the only species that does X, and then over the years that follow, they're generally proved wrong. So humans are the only species that use tools. Wrong. Humans are the only species that use language. Wrong. Humans are the only species that experience culture or have morality. And by each of those kind of assertions ends up being proven to be incorrect. The latest one, I think, is that humans are the only animals that blush, or that have a kind of evolutionary response, which kind of signifies that you've made a mistake or you're embarrassed, which is probably related to complex emotions. But I don't believe any other animals do that.
there was recently a news report that there was a gorilla who had a fight with his best friend in an enclosure where they were observed. I think it was in Japan, and he's very clearly ruminating afterwards. He's distraught, and he has this. He sits by himself and hangs his head and tries to understand his relationships.
Has he apologized to the other gorilla?
I don't know. It was a 90-second clip, because I would explain to the aliens human beings no longer have an attention span beyond 90 seconds. Yeah.
So just fight him again. But then what are we then? If other animals can do all these, what is it about us that distinguishes us from them? That's a big question.
Human beings are the only ones that use microphones.
Well, yes. Some animals are so big. I mean, elephants don't need microphones, do they, really, to be heard? There is something also, I mean, our desire to reflect is interesting. I mean, the fact that what we're doing here now, our kind of self-consciousness, and us wanting to turn and process what we see into something that's a little bit more tangible and understandable, I think kind of differentiates us.
Well, that's what they're doing when they're sniffing each other's bottoms.
Oh, right.
Well,
It's because they have very powerful noses. So fundamentally, this is our version of sniffing each other's bottoms. I suppose it is really, isn't it? Because I'm asking you questions.
so I think some of the things that kind of human exceptionalism. I mean, we're very cocky as a species, you know,
Yes.
where we assume we're brilliant and other people are not. And some of the things that we do, as I understand it, are because of restrictions that we've got as humans. So, for example, you know, humans are some of the only species that kiss. But a large part of that is because it's just because of how we're constructed, and we've got nerve endings in our lips in a way that lots of other species don't. But also, many other species have much more highly developed senses of smell. So they actually don't need to, you know, touch each other in that way to work out if there's attraction, because they can tell from smell. Wouldn't that be handy if you could walk into a room and you could immediately tell from smell who your potential mate was?
Or instead of a handshake, we had to sniff each other's bottoms, you know, one day. But we're also, there's something contradictory about ourselves as well, in that we can hold two different and opposite ideas at once. Do you get, Janna, frustrated by the skepticism about certain provable, evident things? For example, moon landings, flat Earth, the fact that people can ignore evidence.
Yeah, here's evidence that the Earth isn't flat. It's, you know, it's morning somewhere in another country. The sun rises at different times. I mean, there's really very basic evidence. But actually, I think what's confounding to me is the simultaneous desire to believe that grainy photos of orange blobs in the distance are aliens, but that the Earth is flat. So I think that that's really super confusing, the conflict between wanting to accept evidence for science or just how extraordinary the world is. Forget all of this scientific method and evidence. It's fascinating what's true. It's much more interesting than the made-up stories.
Yes, but what is it about us that we have this ability to hide ourselves from something that's obvious and present? I mean, take the whole thing on climate change as well. The idea that despite that we can take evidence and put it to one side and say evidence is no more valid than opinion or belief. What does that say about us? I'm asking huge questions here, but
Yes. I mean, I wonder whether is that exclusive to us, or are we going to find the same thing when aliens arrive en masse, and they're going to they're going to have the same reactions to each other as we do?
I'm always amazed in science fiction when you know we land on an alien planet, alien civilization. All those alien life forms only have one nation, don't they? They have a leader for the entire planet. And it's funny that we think that is sort of more normal than what we have.
Well, we also are not imagining aliens very thoroughly. If you look at the variety of life on Earth, we have jellyfish. I mean, that is extraordinary. We have animals who don't have localized brains, who have brains in their tentacles, for instance. And so we have to imagine that these are creatures that are not in atmospheres like we are in, and might not be under stars that emit light in the same band, so they might not have eyes. I mean, we're talking about something that's so extraordinarily different, and we really fail at imagining what alien life
We just
might
made
be
them look like us. Every single movie about aliens looks pretty much like us.
Yes, they have
And
two
they're
eyes.
Yes,
And they have sticks.
I think that's
Yes.
more for budgetary reasons than accuracy. But yes, we see everyone in our own image. You know, we come up with AI, but we turn it into chat bots, personalities. We talk about it almost being sentient.
And it's back to that kind of cockiness, isn't it? That, you know, and we see that in all of these films where it's essentially a biped, you know, it's someone who's a kind of quirky version of a human. But on that something that arose a few minutes ago that was on my mind. About 25 years ago, when I worked for a human rights organization for liberty, which is the equivalent of the American Civil Liberties Union for the Americans in the room, so the kind of main civil liberties organization in England and Wales. We got together with a lot of our colleagues who worked for these organizations in other countries, including the ACLU, and we were exchanging stories about the conspiracy theory correspondence that we got in. And much of the conspiracy theory correspondence which came in the United Kingdom was from people who believed that when they'd gone for a dental operation or they'd gone into an NHS hospital, something had been implanted in their brain. Whereas the Americans tended to get a lot more, I was abducted by aliens in the middle of the night, which I thought was really interesting. And there's definitely a piece to be done on the different types of conspiracy theories depending on the country you're in.
So the American conspiracy is like, we're American, we're so special that aliens want us.
And we don't have an effective public health system.
Yes, that's right. But also resilience is another thing, isn't it? It's that we, I mentioned the fact that we laugh, but when I was researching the death of Stalin, people were telling me about under the Great Terror of Stalin, people were circulating joke books about Stalin with jokes, and you could be shot if you were reported to having the book or having told a joke. And yet somehow they wanted that ability to be able to just laugh at something, to show them that there's something about us that they haven't shut down.
So just on that, I think that light and dark is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, I kind of specialize in sad law. I represent a lot of political prisoners who are in prison and shouldn't be, including Zia, who, of course, we all in this room hope will be freed imminently. But something that I always find remarkable is when I work with my clients who've been tortured, have been arbitrarily detained, have seen really the worst of humanity, that often in those spaces they've managed to find space to laugh. And maybe I'll just give one example. This isn't a client, actually, it's a friend. Jason Rezaian, the Washington Post correspondent who was detained 10 years ago in Iran, tells this wonderful story about how his captors were taunting him and trying to get him to sing just as a way to humiliate him. So one day he said to them, I'll do it, like after being pressurized to sing for a long time. And he said, but you're going to have to stand up. So they stood up, and then he sang the Star-Spangled Banner. And then he told them at the end, you've all now committed treason, which I thought was wonderful. Yeah, but to do that in circumstances where you're being placed in solitary confinement, these people literally have your life in their hands.
Absolutely.
And to respond like that, it shows you real resilience of the human spirit.
It's interesting that, and I've said this before at this venue over the years, that the dictators and authoritarian leaders are always suspicious of jokes, of poetry, of art, because they can't control the reaction to it. And the reaction to it is often spontaneous. Laughter is spontaneous, which they don't like. They want to be able to predict how people respond to things. And it's that little inner resilience. My dad, born in Naples, and in the Second World War, he was only about 16, 17, became a partisan, fighting against the fascists. And he was always very quiet about his experience, but he told one story about how they were all being given their tasks for the day, and the leader was saying that such and such yesterday went to find some hens and steal some chickens from someone's house so they could be fed. And then he turned to my dad and said, no, your task for today is, we know someone who's been taken prisoner by the Mussolini's people, and we want you to go and get him out of there before he spills any. And my dad was going, my God, and the guy from the day before went, I got the eggs, and that's his memory of, and he did. He went and got the guy out. But it's just that that kind of boiling it down to the day-to-day absurdities of life.
But it's also a tension releaser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen? Do you see more about people through what they eat than you ever did when you were as a journalist, as a political journalist, correspondent?
Well, I mean, what's happened since then is extraordinary in how much every single cuisine is eaten by pretty much everybody. So that's in itself, I mean, the opening up of that is extraordinary. And also in the UK, that we are finally producing food that is worth eating with ingredients which were always good, which we wrecked.
Yes.
with every meal. But I mean, when I was in the Soviet Union as a correspondent, the great thing, the food was absolutely symbolic of just how defiant you were going to be and how generous you could be. So you would be invited into people's homes and share between 5 of you a sausage the size of your big finger, and everybody would eat it with such delicacy and relish, and everybody would eat it smiling. And then if you were lucky enough to have any vodka, because at those days I was there with the perestroika and Gorbachev, and vodka was banned, and people would go around. Yes, he was called Lemonade Joe. That was their humor. And people would buy toothpaste, because there's a minute amount of alcohol in toothpaste, and so we'd have sausage and we'd squirt toothpaste and eat. So there was humor and defiance in what you wanted to eat. And I don't know that any longer there is any political possibility with food, except for when you want to patronize the cuisines of places that are, under threat.
I think the whole concept of food is strange when you're thinking, if we're really going to take the alien conversation seriously, because what we're doing when we're eating is we're converting energy. And so an entire question of how other creatures will metabolize. And in fact, when we look for signatures of alien life at such a great distance from other planets, we're looking to see if they're metabolizing. We're looking for the excesses post-metabolism, like methane, or signatures in the atmosphere, because we presume that all living things share that in common, the requirement that they convert energy from one living source into another. And there is this aspect, even though there are many vegans and vegetarians, we all eat living things, even if it's plants. There's very few organisms that can eat rocks, although there might be one extremophile that eats rocks. But anyway, we're all eating living things, so it's much more likely it's going to come here to eat us. Did you ever see the old Twilight Zone episode where the aliens come? It's a fantastic flying saucer scene. The aliens are running, and they all willingly go on the ship, and then someone shouts, "It's a cookbook!" Like, so. Anyway, I really felt Julia should,
Yeah.
Could I just say, sorry, I appreciate this panel title took people by surprise. It took me by surprise too. So I'm just.
Has it made you think about?
Yeah, exactly. But just something, knitting together something that you both said about food, and then about lack of sense of humor on the part of people who detain. Something that I've seen rather weirdly in quite a few of my cases, or in with friends who are former political prisoners, has been that there is an assumption on the part of authoritarian states that when there are references made to food, that it must be some kind of code. So I mentioned Jason earlier. Jason, just before he was in prison 10 years ago in Iran, had learned that Iran is an avocado-free zone, which he found kind of fascinating given the climate and so on. And he was exchanging some messages with people about, just a joke, about having a Kickstarter to bring avocados to Iran. So during his interrogation, like a serious part of his interrogation was, is avocado code for CIA? And he was saying, no, it's literally just about avocados. Yes. And there's a parallel with one of my clients who's in prison at the moment, Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong. So another publisher like Zia, a journalist in prison for being a journalist and for running a newspaper which says things that the authorities don't like, something very familiar to this audience here. And he's not allowed to write about politics or his case or anything, but he is allowed to write about businesses. And one of the businesses that he runs is a hotel in Canada. And it's very important to him that there's a low price burger and fries on a Friday night, because it's a social thing. Like, elderly people in the community come in, so they run it at a loss, essentially. It's $5 for a burger and fries. And he was sending letters to make clear that under no circumstances should the price of the burger and fries rise. And of course, the authorities thought, well, burger and fries must be code for the USA. It's some terrible plot. But it's really interesting, isn't it, that there's that total paranoia, and they can't grasp the idea that you're just talking about avocados and you're just talking about burger and fries. It's not a plot.
I remember when researching something for Veep and in the loop, and going around the Pentagon and we were given a tour of the Pentagon. And it's all very formal, but the guy who takes you around walks backwards. They're trained to walk backwards because it's a loop thing while talking. Even going upstairs and round corners, it's quite a sight. But he told us because the Pentagon has a central kind of courtyard area and there's a building right in the middle, and he was saying that building is the one that at the time had the most Soviet missiles, satellites and everything trained on it, because that seemed to be the building that everyone in the Pentagon at one point or another would go to, and it turned out just to be the hot dog cafe and coffee area, and it was like the most dangerous place in the world. And that's that's what we do, though. We invent. We always. I talked about how we celebrate what's in front of us, but we also simultaneously want to think about something that's even better, something higher, bigger than ourselves. Whether it's religion or a creed, a dogma, a higher authority. We have that kind of, and we give everything ceremony as well to make. Even sitting down for dinner, wherever you go, there's a kind of set of rules that people, or conventions that people fall into or are expected to fall into.
I was just thinking sort of slightly sideways on this,
That's
but
all right.
going back to food being defining whether or not you're alien yourself on this earth. There was something sort of bizarre about avocado pears. They represented, for all the foreign community living in Moscow at the time, the absolute height of things that they desired and really missed. I never ate an avocado pear in England ever, but any time that any foreigner was going to go to Finland, everybody would be telephoned around saying, is there anything I can bring you back from Helsinki? And without fail, everybody said, bring me back an avocado pear. And you'd go there with your little rucksack of clothes and a massive empty suitcase and go to the shops in Helsinki and bring back these avocado pears. And at this point, the way that you got there was by train. And there was a sort of an understanding that the border guards wouldn't bother the expats that were on the train, until one occasion when this woman came back with 2 suitcases. All there was in them was avocado pears. And for some peculiar reason, the border guards got on and they had the clipboards, and she knew they were going to be gone. So they picked up the suitcases, opened them up, and there were these pears, and they took them out, so sniffed them, rattled them, what is this? And she said, avocado pears. And they said, what do you do with the avocado pears? And she said, you boil them very slowly for 4 hours.
No, I feel that I'm on this panel to randomly say weird things about aliens.
No, you
So
don't have to.
I was going to say more random weird things about aliens in the middle of your very lovely conversation.
You can,
But
if you want, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say
Yeah.
one thing about panspermia, which is the idea that all of this DNA, by the way, we share a lot of DNA with lettuce. And
With lettuce, yes.
With plants.
In
But-
the UK, we had a prime minister compared to a lettuce.
Yes.
Several years
I think
ago.
I remember this.
And the lettuce won. The lettuce
Yeah.
proved more
Yeah.
long-lasting and
Yeah.
more intelligent in the end.
But there is an idea that the DNA originated from outer space, that we are the aliens, that it came on an asteroid or a meteor that struck the Earth and planted the genetic material, which then radiated into bacteria.
I do wonder whether
So we are the aliens.
We are the aliens. Hurrah. I do wonder whether a lot of tendency to have belief in, to ignore evidence and veer towards conspiracy is because we've never quite got over knowing that we're not at the center of the solar system, we're not at the center of the universe, that actually we are a thing, a tiny thing that's going around something else. And that's just so destroyed our sense of exceptionalism that we're coming up with more and more. That's my theory anyway, that we're coming up with more systems to kind of give us a bit more of a sense of us being better than everything else, really.
And it's why we assume they look like us, because we just can't bear the idea there's something that we would not recognize in any form.
Absolutely. And, and in the Old Testament, it's, and God created man in his own image, so it starts with us, really.
Is it terrible to ask a question?
No, it's not terrible. This is a safe space.
I just wonder about whether other species or other life forms would have sexism and would have racism. Are they concepts which we would see other people have?
Yeah, and whether they have 3, 4, 5 genders, or whether there's only one, or...
We can ask that here in the animal kingdom. I think that's very interesting. Do dog breeds discriminate? But there are, of course, species that don't have such things.
Yes.
That don't differentiate in that particular way. They don't have distinctions. There are fish that change genders, and there's a whole book. I forget the journalist's name, Sabrina. I'm sorry, I forgot her last name, but it's basically about marine animals that change genders. There's this one fish where the female one of the females will eventually tire of a bullying male, which is about 5 times the size of the females, and she'll change genders, and the whole thing, she'll become 5 times bigger, and chase out the male and become the new male.
Great, there's a movie. We're going to throw it open quite soon. I just one final thing I wanted to read in my survey of Martian poetry. If I can find this. Hang on. Right. Here we go. Do bear with them. Right. Here we go. It's from a poem called Earth by John Hall Wheelock. A planet doesn't explode of itself, said dryly the Martian astronomer, gazing off into the air. That they were able to do it is proof that highly intelligent beings must have been living there. And that for me sums up our contradictory nature, because, we have climate emergency staring at us, and yet weirdly more and more governments doing their best to deny its existence. Just before we came on, we were talking about AI and being confronted with something some people are advocating should be have rights, something that is mirroring humanity. And what is that saying of us? Are we just a collection of algorithms and predictive code and so on? What is it? What can we cling on to stop ourselves being reduced to a kind of minor robot status?
Yeah, so there's, I think many of you in the room will know there's been a movement for many years to kind of give essentially the equivalent of human rights to animals, or to certain types of animals. There's some very interesting kind of developments culturally with recognition of rights for rivers, for example, and bodies of water in certain countries. And increasingly now there's a movement to kind of suggest that in some way rights, human rights, including dignity, should be recognized for certain types of AI, which instinctively I have a real problem with. But then it does make you think about, well, what is it about humans that's different? Yeah, and hence having this panel.
Having this panel. I mean, my hope is that actually you cannot summon up humanity. Even the word humanity, it implies generosity and openness and civility. And yet, we torture, we execute, we imprison. The contradictions. I'm always fascinated by the American contradiction of, the sanctity of life, and everyone should have a gun. Everyone is born free and equal, and life is precious. That person should be executed by lethal injection. That kind of contradiction that we can happily hold ourselves. I ought to throw it open, really, because I see already we've got nowhere near defining humanity other than admitting that it's well nigh impossible, and that might be a good thing. But who knows? If anyone's got the answer, or a question, or an observation. Yes, gentleman over there. Yeah. You see, this is progress. We're here, 2026, and it all boils down to batteries.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
There is a wonderful short story, and I can't remember who wrote it, but there's some aliens who want to invade Earth, and they need to send some spies to come and gather information. And so the spies prepare, fully expecting it to be really hard to extract valuable intelligence out of our society. They rock up, download the internet, go home, and their job is done. Humans seem to need to share a lot of information. That seems to be one of our defining traits. The big tech companies of today, many of them are based on this human need to share information. Is that a weakness or a strength of our species?
I'll have a go, but if anyone wants to... Well, it is probably both, isn't it? Everything is a tool. It depends how you use that tool. And anything, we're masters of invention. We come up with stuff. We come up with the wheel, which was great. Wine. I think the wine is even better than the wheel as an invention. And we come up with... I remember when the early days of the internet and the start of like Facebook, there was this missionary zeal to talk about it's going to connect everyone. It's about breaking down barriers. It's about community. The government won't be able to stop you because you'll be able to communicate with it. And then see where we are with it now, which is slightly the reverse. We are entirely at the mercy of these 4 or 5 very, very wealthy billionaires who have expressed doubt as to whether humanity should actually carry on. So that's where we are. I think there's an inbuilt entropy with everything we come up with, isn't it? We come up with an invention, but within 30 years' time, someone will abuse it or use it as an outlet for pornography and horrific violence.
Well, just as well, it's a really good question. I think kind of prior to technological advances, humans' capacity for gossip is, there.
Yes.
And that whole loose lips sink ships, and the idea that regardless of what structures you have in place for security, the bottom line is, look, we're in a room full of many investigative journalists. People talk and people say things. And we had that previously. I mean, I think there's something particularly interesting at the moment in the fact that we have this total contradiction. Going back to your point, we've got so many people who are more connected than ever before, but also more isolated than ever before, in part as a result of their use of technology and what it then does to their human interactions. It's a really good question.
Isn't there an adage, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead? I forgot who said that.
Who said? Yes.
I feel like it was Churchill, but I'm not sure.
But there's also the assumption that the aliens are out there and they're coming to see us, and that's predicated on what? Why people don't really seem to talk about the fact that maybe we are the most intelligent out there, and it's only when we arrive somewhere else that maybe we will discover a whole race of blobs who are not nearly as close to us in intelligence.
Well, again, I think that's really evidenced by what is true about the Earth, that there are billions of species, and only one of them is trying to go to Mars.
Yeah.
And of those billions of species, we might be stunningly short-lived species. There is no evidence that we have any longevity. The evidence is exactly to the contrary. So if you look at jellyfish, and you look at species who have survived for millions of years, none of them are building spacecraft to go to the moon.
There is, I think, the Fermi paradox. If the aliens are there, where are they? If the aliens are out there,
where is everybody?
Where is everyone?
Yeah, and probably most of them are in the form of bacterial life.
Yes,
or biomass.
It's mostly jellyfish and small granules. I mean, you said there's only one species that wants to go to Mars. I'd kind of narrow it down further as there's only one person who wants to go to Mars. And again, the contradiction being, planet Earth, electric cars, we've got to save planet Earth by going to an even more toxic radioactive hellscape than what. Why don't you, all the brilliance and ingenuity you've put into trying to get us over there, could you not apply it here? Because we are actually still in much better condition than Mars, okay? Anyway, that's my little rant. Sorry, it's over. This is your time, not mine. Yes, question over there. Oh, here we go.
No battery, but I think, but no also. Thank you for your...
Ellen.
Hi.
Oh,
okay,
there we go.
Hello.
That works.
Thank you for your ideas and questions. I also have one recommendation about the TV shows about aliens. It's called Scavenger's Reign. It's amazing. Creators achieved really great results to showcase what alien life can be and how humans cannot go well in different environments. And I also have a question. What emotion would be most needed when communicating with aliens? Thank you.
Heavens. What emotion would be most needed? Mm.
I feel like you have, I'm going to guess your answer. Empathy.
Empathy, yeah.
Well, can I say something about TV?
Mm.
So I grew up with, just because your point about television, I grew up without a television till I was 17, which meant that all through kind of 1970s and 1980s, I had to kind of work out from playground references to TV shows, you know, how to play along and not be the weird kid without a TV. So I learned about Knight Rider, you know, and the Ready Brek ad and a whole series, Dynasty, like through picking things up from other people and then just pretending I was a normal person with a television when I wasn't.
Yeah.
Television in itself is such a bizarre thing, isn't it? Humans kind of sitting around. There's a great Far Side cartoon, which is called In the Days Before Television, which has a family all sitting around a kind of space in the living room. And like art, once you have it, but the absence of it then is such a thing.
I know. And now we rate it as such a kind of totemic part of our existence that we now are worried that we're no longer gathering around that thing in the corner, but we're doing this individually now.
Yeah.
You know,
and so I grew up absolutely being obsessed by radio. And I thought as a child, when you heard radio ads, that there was a whole system of hidden microphones. And there was someone on a Saturday who would go through the recordings and then work out the ads. So I spoke like something from The Truman Show in pre-Truman Show days for a while, you know. Someone said, would you like butter with your toast? I'd say, only if it's Kerrygold, it's so creamy. And then would listen out in the hope that I'd made it that week, and I never did.
Well, people don't do that for a living.
Television leaks out into space. I just want to say that we are very leaky. The way that we have learn to encode information on light, like radio light, is leaky. And so we are regularly, by accident, emanating television shows into space. It's probably the first thing anyone will detect.
That's right. So it wouldn't it be great if the aliens arrived and they immediately went, "Where is your Kerrygold butter? It is so creamy." And we must take some more questions. Yes.
Oh, and I agree. The answer is empathy.
Empathy.
I think
yes.
empathy is
And I think we all agreed, or we at least empathized. Yes.
Hi there.
Hi.
Is it not the case that the simple explanation is that we are the only species which is obsessed with trying to identify ourselves?
Yeah, we talk about ourselves. We criticize ourselves. We betray ourselves. We
Delude ourselves.
Delude ourselves. Yeah, absolutely. It's also. I also think that a lot of what we do is a way of deferring boredom. Really. We have this magnificent brain wearing away, and it needs stimulating most of the time. I mean, I think we're now in a year where we're overstimulating it, but we can't sit still anymore. We can't contemplate the. I mentioned many zegs ago that the most irritating thing I had was my meditation app, my mindfulness app that would just pester me all day, saying, "Have you done your mindfulness?" If you tell 5 friends about this app, you will get 3 free courses from, it's the most stressful app I've ever, but have we lost that? I mean, I started with that word wonder. Have we still got that sense of wonder? I wonder.
I mean, I think absolutely. Our vision just keeps expanding, and we keep marveling, I think, and being stunned at what we discover. And we now see Earth-like planets around other star systems. It'll never be this Earth. It's very possible that any life on any water-based planet around any other star will be toxic to us and us to them. But that is a remarkable discovery, and it's actually quite recent. These aren't things that Galileo knew.
I know you've got something, but let's just take a few more. Should we take 2, one after the other, and then we can reply?
Hello, thanks for this wonderful conversation. I wish it never ended. You talked a lot about how hard it is to explain what human is, because everything that we think of ourselves like that is unique about us turns out to be not that unique. What about the other way around? Can we explain ourselves to the aliens by trying to explain what humans are not? What are we incapable of not doing or not being or not express.
Right, we will store that. And I think, let's go over. Yes, you had your hand up earlier. Right, yeah, yeah. Oh, you don't have a microphone yet? So what are we not capable of yet?
I don't know if you're aware of the fact that Georgian song was sent to space. And it's Chakrolo, it's a very beautiful song. It was chosen by NASA in 1977, like a sounds from Earth.
Yeah.
And the joke is, if the aliens will come one day to visit us, they will be singing Chakrolo. And to continue with the jokes, it's a very good book by, I think, Ben Lewis. It's called Hammer and Tickle. And it collects all the Soviet jokes,
Yes.
which were, people were sent to gulags
Yes.
and never came back.
Yes.
And it's a very good translation. The humor is kept. I really recommend it. It was given to me as a wedding present. So
Does it still make you laugh?
it does. I read it very often with my husband.
Shall we just take one last comment, question, and then we'll try and respond? I see we're nearly out. All right. Lady there with hand up. What are we not capable of? Yeah.
Hello,
Hello, hi.
thank you. How do you think, who could be the one person to first time meet with aliens? Only one person.
Oh, Lord. Alive?
Yes.
Or
Who's-
no.
Which one person would we choose to meet the alien?
First time, yes.
Okay. I mean, depends. If it's an abduction you have in mind, then Donald Trump. You know, but that's just a personal thing. Or he's just anal probing, anything like that. You know, anything unpleasant, I think, would be quite good. I don't know if you want to think about that, but I know you wanted to say something earlier. What are we not capable of? Now, that's an interesting question because, I mean, we can levitate, but I think when there's part of us that doesn't let us think about that actually we're capable of anything if we put our mind to it, is what seems to keep us going, really. We're not capable of eternal life yet. We seem to be capable of most things, not necessarily in a good way, but
We can't regenerate a limb,
no,
but
no.
but people are working on
Yeah.
splicing that into the human genome.
And of course, we cannot travel faster than light. That's just it. That's just it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking with your wonderful Martian poetry earlier.
Yeah.
You know, the type of poetry I really love is poetry written through the eyes of a child. You know, your kind of Roger McGough first day at school type poem. And actually, I wonder on your question about a single person. I'm not sure it should be a world leader. Actually, I think it should probably be a child. You know, I think there's a lot that we lose later in life when we kind of forget that seeing the world through
A child's
the eyes of
eyes.
a child
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
important. My father had a very bad stroke when he was 51, and he had to learn to walk and talk again. And it meant when my kids were then learning to walk or learning to talk, my father empathized very hard with them. You know, he would see them kind of trying to roll over, and he'd say, "I have to leave the room. It's too distressing," because he remembered as an adult having to relearn all of those skills. You know, and actually, it's really interesting because you don't really think about how distressing that is for a child. You know, and it took my father's health problems to make us see it. But yeah, I wonder if actually the best person, the kind of best of us, would be actually to have a child meet a child from their civilization, if indeed they have a child,
Well, yes.
and if indeed they have a civilization.
Yes. I mean, it's a health and safety nightmare, though, isn't it? You know, aliens arrive. What are we going to do? We're going to send them. We're going to give them a child. But that's. But I thought. I mean, I love Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I love the fact that it ends. The way we communicate with the aliens is through music. It's through a musical phrase, and there hasn't been time in this session, but throughout the last few days, we've been talking about how unique music is. I've often found that. You know, what is it that just noises arranged in a certain way can get certain emotions from us? And actually, in an audience, those emotions can be quite similar. We can detect what these noises are doing. That I find fascinating and magical and miraculous. I'm sure there's, you know, we can analyze it rationally and scientifically. I like that mix of something that isn't language, isn't words, just sound, that somehow still does something to us. I thought you were going to say something. No? Okay.
No,
No.
I just suddenly had in mind, I suddenly thought we need to to meet them, we need to send the hologram of ABBA.
Yes, yes. The ABBA hologram has been in London now for the last 10 years, and it really should go now. I think that's it. We've reached the end. As someone said, we could gas on for another day or so, but thank you very much, and thank you to our panel, and thank you to you. Thank you.